The reappointment of Suella Braverman as Home Secretary continues to be met with consternation, especially by those in the so-called blob. Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove has today defended Braverman over her email leak, describing her as a first-rate politician. Labour has predictably objected to her reappointment with concerns about security breaches. But is the level of backlash to her reappointment fair, or is it just a sign that she is resented by the Liberal establishment for her desire to bring immigration under control? Joining me now is political commentator Matt Stadlen and John Redwood, Conservative MP for Wokingham. Thank you both for joining me today. I'm going to start off with you, Matt. What do you make of Braverman's reappointment as Home Secretary?
Well, I think like most people watching, I find it totally extraordinary. I think the test is this. If you, Calvin, or anyone watching your show had been sacked or forced to resign from a job on a Wednesday, how likely do you think it would be that you would be reappointed to that same job the following Tuesday, less than a week after you'd been fired? I think we all know the answer to that. In the real world, it simply wouldn't happen. Rishi Sunak was supposed to steady the ship after the disastrous 40-odd day premiership of Liz Truss. Instead, from the very, very beginning, one of the first things he did as our Prime Minister has led to calls for a public inquiry. So you have to ask yourself, why did he do it? Because he's not a stupid man, he's highly intelligent. To my mind, he almost certainly did it because he felt he needed to assuage that side of the party, that side of the Tory party. We all know that it's being torn to pieces at the moment, and also possibly felt he needed specifically the support of and the backing of Suella Braverman, who came out, I think, on the Sunday in an article in the Sunday Telegraph supporting him in order for him to get through that leadership race. So it's dirty, grubby politics. This is someone who broke the ministerial code. Doesn't matter about the finer details. She broke the code. She was effectively sacked or resigned. 6 days later, she was reappointed. And it is already blighting what was supposed to be, for the Tories, a fresh start.
But Matthew, the finer details always matter, don't they? And it seems to me that she was ousted as part of the coup, and they used what was a minor infraction of ministerial code to get rid of her. And you said in the real world this wouldn't happen. However, this is a new government. So if you worked for a company and there was a new CEO and you'd resigned and fallen on your sword, and that new CEO saw your talent and saw your potential and wanted you to rehire you, that could potentially happen.
It's the same government. It's been the same Tory government for 12 years. Yes, it is true. We haven't had a general election.
It's the same party, not the same government.
It's the same government.
I've let you talk. Let's ask Mr. Redwood what is his take. Is this about unity? Was bringing Miss Braverman in a unity factor?
It's about unity, and it's about putting someone into a job who is really trained and expert for that job, a job which is much needed for the country as a whole. And I see these silly grins on the face of your other commentator. But the country is desperately concerned that these people are not at risk with these people traffickers, in danger of their lives in small boats, unlicensed small boats that are very dangerous. We want to stop it. And the country is horrified that some people come in who are economic migrants, pretending to be something else in order to queue jump and take a lot of money off the state. And so I can assure you the country wants this problem solved. And the one MP in the Conservative Party who knows the inside details of the criminal justice part that relates to illegal migration and knows the details of the law, is Suella Braverman, and she does have to challenge a lot of the establishment lawyers and the establishment in the Home Office who clearly do not want to stop this trade.
Can I respond to that, Calvin? I find it absolutely extraordinary that John Redwood thinks that there is only one MP in his party. How many MPs have you got, John? Hundreds of MPs in Parliament. That Suella Braverman is the only person who'd be capable of getting a grip on what you call illegal immigration. She is so incapable of getting a grip that she is being accused of ignoring legal advice, saying she needs to find hotels for people who are at the moment stuck in what is effectively a detention centre where people are getting scabies and other diseases and violence is breaking out because the conditions are so disgusting. She is totally out of her depth. But even if she were not out of her depth on that point, she broke the ministerial code, she was sacked, and you think she's the only person fit enough to do that job within 6 days of the sacking. I find it extraordinary,
I'm going to refocus that question for Mr. Redwood. Is it not the case, there was a 90-minute row between former Prime Minister Liz Truss and Miss Braverman? Is it not the case that actually Miss Braverman wants to reduce immigration, legal immigration, and cut down on the illegal immigration? And it's not that she's the only one capable of doing so, but the only one with the political will to do so. And everyone else, this is part of the problem of why she was ousted, because no one else wants to cut immigration.
Well, I don't think she's the only one with the will to do it. I think there are quite a few MPs with the will to do it. But the reason Suella is different from the rest of us is she is a trained lawyer who has made a particular study of this part of the law. Now, I'm not a trained lawyer and I haven't studied this particular part of the law. And most of my colleagues are in my position, not Suella's. And Suella has shown in the past that she has been able to take on difficult legal matters because she was one of the government's main law officers, a previous part of her career. And she knows how that system works. And surely you can see that the system has let the public down for several years now. There is a clear public wish, in the interests of the safety of the migrants and in the interests of fairness to genuine asylum seekers, because not all these people are genuine asylum seekers, that we get a grip on this, and somehow the legal establishment has been stopping us. And so that is the reason I think we need Suella. And Suella does have a lot of support in the party. I do not believe that her infringement of the ministerial code was a serious one. I'm sure we've all occasionally sent an email by mistake to an extra person because we've been in a hurry and we pressed the wrong button on our technology. And she recognised that, she apologised. Fortunately, it had nothing to do with national security and it wasn't price-sensitive information. So she's apologised, she made an honest declaration of what went wrong. I think the new Prime Minister is right to use her talent.
OK, and Matthew, you've spent a lot of time talking about this minor infraction, but is the bigger case not actually Liz Truss leaked top secret information, and this was covered up during the leadership campaign? Is that not where we should be addressing our concern, not Suella Braverman using the wrong email account?
Liz Truss and any infringements she may or may not have indulged in, advertently or inadvertently, of course needs to be looked at, but she's now the past, thank goodness. I think John Redwood would probably thank goodness that, because otherwise his party really would have fallen apart. The focus has to be on the Home Secretary. If John Redwood thinks it's such a minor infraction, why on earth was she sacked? You talk about a new CEO taking over. I can tell you, when a new CEO comes into a business, he or she will want to set a new tone. What they absolutely will not do is bring back someone who was fired the previous week by the other CEO. It simply doesn't happen in the real world. The anger that people feel about this in the country, if you go out and speak to them, I suspect would be palpable. And I've got a question for John Redwood, who, by the way, I think...
That's quite a broad statement. I don't agree, and I don't think the majority of people who've been tuning into the show would agree, because we see this in our polls that we put out. Actually, most people back Suella coming back because people want to see a reduction in immigration, both legal and illegal.
It depends who you ask, and if people see Suella Braverman as the only person who's prepared to tackle illegal immigration or as asylum, as I would describe it, yes, then that may well be the case. But she's not going to go very far in a government that doesn't support her. It's just going to cause more disunity in John Redwood's party. Let me ask John a really important question, Calvin, because John was talking about genuine asylum seekers and the importance for them to have a fair hearing. Do you, John Redwood, think it is acceptable that at the moment thousands of people are being held in unacceptable conditions in Kent, I think in Ramsgate, where lawyers are saying that there's going to be a costly legal bill for the government to foot because allegedly Suella Braverman has ignored calls to find these people hotels? Do you think people should be held in inhumane conditions, yes or no?
Well, of course they shouldn't be held in inhumane conditions. I haven't personally inspected these conditions and I wouldn't want to prejudge it. But the whole point is that Suella is trying to stop it in the most obvious way. You've got to stop the supply coming in because the numbers are too big. There are not enough hotels easily available, let alone the huge costs. We shouldn't be bearing this burden. Why don't you help us stop the evil trade?
We should be working with the French.
Thank you, Matt. But this is the point. We need to stop them coming over in the first place rather than looking at the conditions of the hotels. And it's not a terribly poor condition. We know that Camelot Castle was approached as a potential option for housing these immigrants, which is a massive mansion.
No, they are terrible
on the southwest.
They are.
But the problem is the illegal trade in the first place needs cutting down, and surely we should support a minister that is willing to do that. Now, can Rishi Sunak deliver on that at the next election?
Are you asking me?
I'll start with Mr. Redwood. Okay. Will Rishi Sunak cut this illegal immigration problem?
Well, I hope so, and I think he's got to, and he clearly wants to, which is why he took the risk of incensing people like your other guest by having the one person who knows how to do it and needs his backing. And I hope also he will take good advice on the issue which Liz Truss and Suella clearly disagreed about, because I'm strongly of the view that we should not be inviting in lots of people to take low-paid jobs. We need to be getting the pay up in this country, and we need to be helping more of the people on benefits, and we've got hundreds of thousands on benefits, into those jobs so that they will be better off, the economy will be better off, and we don't need this endless supply of cheap labour coming in at the bottom, depressing wages all the time.
Absolutely. I'll put that question to Maz as well, because we have seen mass immigration, and Liz Truss talked about increasing it to increase GDP. But of course, it is importing cheap labour, which undermines British workers and also puts a strain on the NHS, on education, and all the things we know about.
It's not cheap to the state. We have to pay the bills for housing and school places and extra health capacity when we're very short of all those things. It's massively expensive labour. It just happens to be cheap for the employer.
We all want people to be paid a decent, fair wage. I've campaigned in the past for a living wage where people can actually afford to live in the city in which they work or the town in which they work. We all agree on that. At the moment, we are in desperate need of migration. Why are we in desperate need of migration? Because people like John Redwood supported Brexit. As a consequence of that, we have restaurants and also the health service in desperate need of people filling those jobs. At the moment, we don't have the supply from native British workers. That is a fact as far as I can see it. It needs to be a priority. We need to upskill and uptrain and change the culture within this country so people are prepared to do these sorts of jobs. But in the meantime, we face an urgent need to fill that gap in our health service, in restaurants. We need people from abroad. Yes, it needs to be done legally. Yes, this government, Rishi Sunak, does need to get this right. Yes, we need to be compassionate to asylum seekers, but we don't want people coming here illegally if we can stop it. How do we stop it? Partly at source. How do we do that? By having better post-Brexit relations with the French. Because as far as I can see, the French are not doing nearly enough to stop this. In fact, you could argue they're encouraging it by laying on free bus rides to the dangerous drop-off sites where people take this treacherous journey. We need to help get it cut off at source. At the moment, this government has been totally inadequate and totally incompetent in getting a grip on it.
And Mr. Redwood, is this short-termism, this focus on importing labour to solve a labour crisis? Should we not be focusing on teaching more vocational qualifications in school? Should we not be looking at how to upskill British people?
Well, of course, and that's what I've just been saying, and I'm surprised we have disagreement over this, and I'm surprised we have disagreement over the fact that some of these jobs you can train people for very quickly because they are relatively low skilled. They should still be paid a bit more. So
why isn't your government doing it?
That's what I'm urging the government to do, and why don't you help us? We need to mobilise all the employers of the country to understand there's this rich talent pool out there, and the government may need to do a few other things to make it easier for those people to take those jobs. But somehow we've got to get those hundreds of thousands of people into a better life on better pay and not keep on importing all this labour. Because if we import all this labour, we're going to have an even bigger housing shortage. And then your commentator will rightly criticise us for not having solved the housing problem.
Well, that was fascinating. Thank you both for that fulfilling conversation.